Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Namo tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Iti piso Bhagava Arahant Samma Sambuddho Vijacharana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purissa Dhammasarati Satadeva Manusana Buddho Bhagava Tamahan Bhagavantam Abhipujayami. Tamahan Bhagavantam Sirasa Namami. Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatan Veditabo Vinyuhi. Tamahan Dhamman Abhipujayami. Tamahan Dhamman Sirasa Namami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ujjapatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yayapatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Samicipatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yadidam Chattari Purisa Yugani Atha Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Adhaneyo Padhaneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karanyo Anuttaram Punya Ketam Lokasa. Tamahan Sangam Abhipujayami. Tamahan Sangam Sirasa Namami. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being on any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I'm going to be quoted. Okay. There you go. Thank you for your assistance. Okay, here we go. The questions for tonight. Ajahn, if we don't need to improve ourselves, how do we acquire new skills required for the job? Thank you. If you don't have new skills for the job, then you get the sack so you can live a nice, peaceful life. Otherwise, there's always stuff. And anyway, you learn them on the job. It's so easy to meditate after several days of retreat. How to maintain this after the retreat? Just stay on the retreat. Be a monk. So we talk about that tomorrow, because it's another, usually tomorrow may be just how to do this meditation when you get home. For those of you who have a home, those of you who are homeless, like the nuns and the monks, the homeless ones, this will be talked about tomorrow. But to improve ourselves, we're always improving ourselves. And so you can acquire new skills if you want, but after a while, how many more skills do you have to acquire? So anyway. Kitchen Urn is on 24 hours. She is on 19 hours. Please let's give 3 sadhus to Bianca for her committed services to BSWA. She's on 19 hours? You reckon? Where is she? She's not on now. But anyway, we do the 3 sadhus for Bianca and all the people who helped us. Usually that's on the last day. You're way ahead of yourselves. If you are in the right mood for it, would you mind telling the story of the man who gets lost and then finds the monastery with the beautiful music that plays during the night? How many of you don't know that story, the most wonderful music in the world? Only 1 or 2 of you. Most of you know it. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you know that one. Okay, here we go. So this is, there's a meaning behind this, and we'll see that at the very end. There was a man who went on trekking in the Himalaya mountains, or just the foothills. And as he was, an Australian man from Sydney, as he was walking, he was also just taking some photographs of these flowers and rocks, and he was lagging behind, and other people were just asking him to come and hurry up. They can't wait for him, but he was lagging and lagging. And after a while, he lost sight of the main group, took a wrong turn, and got lost in the foothills of the Himalayas. And those foothills are very dangerous places. So, there was actually, remember that nun who was here some time ago? And that she was trekking in the foothills of the Himalayas with her boyfriend. And that they found this lovely cave. And so she sort of started meditating in front of it. And her boyfriend was on the top of the cave, just meditating on a rock. When the bear came, a real bear, Himalayan bear. And she said that the bear attacked her and just grabbed her by the skull. So, just trying to crush her brain. And boyfriend felt a lot of good, sitting up there not knowing what to do. But she said, even though some of the teeth was actually puncturing her skin and blood was coming out, she said she didn't feel any pain. Pain was not the worst of the experience. The worst of the experience was the bad breath of the bear. Stank, almost asphyxiated her, which was much worse, she said, than the pain. But anyway, she did some chanting, and because of the chanting, the bear sort of amazingly do some Buddhist chanting, and the bear just ran away. And after the bear ran away, the boyfriend came. Managed to carry her down to the nearest village to get some treatment. So she survived okay. But you can see her. She became a nun later on. She's got these scars. Have you seen her? She's got these ring of scars around her head where the bear bit her. But the strange stuff, as far as medicine is concerned, is that she always had headaches from that time. The headaches were getting worse. And so I think she went back to UK and had a CT scan. And you know what they found inside her brain? There was a tiny tree growing in her brain. Yeah, she had a tree growing, and only a tiny one. Because what had happened was the bear had got a seed, in its teeth, and as it sort of bit into the skull, and one of the teeth penetrated the skull and actually implanted a tiny seed of a tree. And so there was actually a tree growing inside this woman's brain. So of course, as soon as they saw it, it was very easy just to get rid of, just a chainsaw, and it wasn't that big a tree. There are no birds nesting on it or anything. So it's just a tiny little thing when they took it out, and then she was fine. So it's interesting, just that little story about. So you've got to be careful when you're in the Himalaya mountains. So in this particular case, he got lost, didn't know where to go, And he realized it was getting dangerous, getting more and more lost. It was getting very cold. And we didn't have any sort of warm weather gear on there. And so he managed to see some lights in the distance. And so he made for those lights. And of course, it was one of the monasteries up in the Himalayas. And of course, that when he knocked on the door, we always give accommodation if we possibly can for these lost wanderers. And so they asked him where he was and what he was doing. He said, oh yeah, we know, we can, tomorrow morning, we know that route of that tour company, and so we can take you to meet up with them tomorrow morning after a good night's sleep. And because it was an Australian, it was a Westerner, the abbot said, well, the only comfortable bed we've got, with a mattress is my bed in my office, but you can use it tonight, and I'll go and sleep somewhere else. So after dinner, because they gave him something to eat, he wasn't on 8 precepts, and after he had his meal, he took him to the abbot's office, and there he lay down to go to sleep. He went fast asleep, but about midnight, he woke up. He woke up, he heard this really strange noise. And as he paid attention to it, he realized it was music. But music like you've never heard before. It was just gorgeous music. It thrilled him to the very core of his being. And he was involuntarily, he was just weeping with joy, the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. And he'd been to the Sydney Opera House to hear just this wonderful symphonies by the Berlin Philharmonic. I think he must have even heard the wonderful chanting of the Buddhist monks at Bodhinyana Monastery. That's a joke. But he heard this wonderful chanting, and he went into this beautiful, peaceful sleep. When he woke up in the morning, had a breakfast, and the abbot was about to sort of say goodbye to him and just give him the guide to join up with his tour. But then the man said, oh, just by the way, last night I woke up and I heard this incredible, beautiful, sonorous music. Never heard anything so beautiful before. What was it? And the abbot looked up and said, oh, that. You heard that too, did you? He said, yeah, what is it? He said, I'm sorry, but I cannot tell you. Only monks can know the secret of that music. And the Australian said, oh, come on. He said, no, only monks. So he bit his lip, and just got out his wallet. Okay, $100 US. He said, no, it's not about money. Okay, 500. And the abbot said, sir, it doesn't matter how much money you give me, only monks can know the secret of that. And so no matter what he offered, the abbot said no. And so he had to go and join his party. When he got back to Sydney, he couldn't get it out of his mind. It was just obsessing him. What was that music? He couldn't forget it. And so he went to see a psychologist and a psychiatrist even. And it was obsessing him all day, all night. He couldn't do his job properly. He couldn't do anything. And so in the end, there was only one thing to do. He just got on a plane and went to that part of India, and he managed to find that monastery. And he knocked on the door. It was about a year since he was there before. And he asked the abbot, he said, look, I have to know the source of that sound. It's been bugging me all year, and making me crazy. And the abbot said, look, I told you, last time, the only way you can know what that sound is to become a monk. He said, exactly. Make me a monk. So he said, well, it takes a couple of years of training. Anagarika, novice, and then you can ordain. He said, I don't care how long it takes. I'm going crazy, not knowing what the sound is, so ordain me as a monk. So he was ordained as a monk. First of all, as an anagarika, a novice, and then when his ordination came, it was 3 years since he first heard the sound. And soon after his ordination, the first thing he said to his preceptor was, right, I'm a monk, now tell me, what on earth was that sound? And the abbot said, I can do better than telling you. Come to my office tonight, just before midnight, and I'll show you. So I was really excited. A culmination of 3 years waiting and now he would find out. So they went in the office just before midnight. It was really silent. And just at midnight, he started to hear this incredibly thrilling, beautiful music. And he started to shake with anticipation, but also joy. I mean, it was really worth 3 years of waiting. It was gorgeous, beautiful music. And the abbot pulled back a curtain, behind which was this old wooden door. It was made of the mountain oak in that region, and it must have been so old that he took this solid wooden key and opened the door. No one had been in it for quite a while because it creaked with old age, just like I creak with old age sometimes. As he opened the door, and he saw this passageway, really dark passageway, but there's a bit of light coming under the door at the end of the passageway. And of course, as soon as he opened the door, the music was clearer and even more beautiful. I mean, it's incredible, wonderful. And it'd be like Beethoven's Fifth, played by Beethoven himself. I don't know, he couldn't play because he was blind, but anyway, get the idea of what I'm saying. And then, at the end of that door, at the end of that corridor, there was an iron door, thick, solid iron. And they got this iron key. And they turned it. And again, it was a bit rusty, but he managed to turn it and open the door. And it was getting closer because the music was even more thrilling and more loud. And he was shaking as he walked to the end of that corridor, because at the end of that corridor was a silver door. And that silver door must be worth a fortune, probably mined by monks hundreds and thousands, maybe, I don't know, many years ago, and mined out of the mountain. And there's a solid silver door, and he got this solid silver key out, and he turned it, and he pulled it open. And it was just so amazing music, and he realized there was only one door left, the golden door. It was encrusted with priceless jewels, diamonds and rubies, and all sorts of gemstones from the mountain. This was the last door. And he was shaking just with excitement as he got to the last door. And the abbot put the key in. But before he turned it, he looked at the Australian, the new monk, and said, "Are you sure you want to see what's behind this door? There are no more doors. This is the last one." It can sometimes drive some people mad to see this supernatural stuff. This is not of this earth. This is just some of the most amazing, incredible stuff. Are you sure you're ready for this? And the Australian, he actually thought, after all that sacrifice, all that waiting, he realized this was not a joke, this was serious. So he thought, and he said, "Even if it drives me crazy, it's driving me crazy not to know. So open the door." So the abbot looked at him. Okay. And the abbot put the key in the door. And he turned it. And the Australian, he was shaking and crying and just moaning, because this was just things which many people don't even face in many lives, let in this life. And as he opened the door, wow. You know what was behind the door? I can't tell you because you're not monks. Of course, many of you knew that, but it's worthwhile saying you enjoyed it. It just shows you not superstition, curiosity. Why do you have to know? It's got nothing to do with becoming enlightened, nothing to do with anything. It's just curiosity. And especially if you've got more time and you just really build it up, and then afterwards everybody is really listening, and then, sorry, I can't tell you. Anyway, but anyway, you asked for it, not my fault. Dear Ajahn, if sadness, grief, greed, etc. are impermanent, rise and fall, then why are we trying to get rid of suffering when it's not permanent? Because it comes back again. That's why I try and get rid of it, and it comes back again, and then it... So in the end, we try and not just get rid of suffering, we try and get rid of happiness as well. Both of them. Because where one is, there is the other. You can't have one without the other. So as one person said, what is suffering anyway? But just the gap, the pause between two moments of happiness. What is happiness? The space between two moments of suffering. That is called happiness and suffering. So you can't have one without the other. And people think, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful? We can go to some heaven realm and live happily ever after. Ha ha ha. Imagine. Could you do that? There was one movie which I did see, and because I was told to see this, that was Groundhog Day. Yeah, and the reason I saw that Groundhog Day, because it was similar to samsara. Go round and round. The guy was repeating the same old day again and again, but he could remember it. So after a while, he perfected it. Perfected the day. So there was no suffering, but not really. He didn't think it was suffering, but what did he get? Boredom. Same old day again and again. And that's what happened if you went to heaven. If you went to heaven to live happily ever after, the same old harp music day after day. The same old sort of ambrosia food day after day. The same old white clothes with donuts on the top of your head day after day after day. You get bored with that after a while. And that was why St. Augustine, one of the Catholic fathers, he was smart enough to know that the only way to enjoy a heavenly existence is to have one day every year, one day out of 365, where you go to hell. So you live in hell for one day, otherwise you wouldn't appreciate heaven. And that's so true. Anyway, when a person have NDE, he is usually seen floating in the air in astral body near his broken body. Why is it his? No, girls can have NDEs as well. But when a person who possesses some kind of powers and while they are asleep, their mind can take up astral body that can appear anywhere, in other countries or even in heaven. My question is, unlike NDE, the person with powers can have his astral body manifest where it wishes to go and appear immediately. Please comment. Remember that story which I told last night about the fellow who saw the ghost? It was his mum. It was a sort of, we don't call it astral body, we call it mind-made body. And of course it can stay close to your old body if it is like been in an accident or on the operating table, because of course you've still got some attachment to that body. So you can stand up and look at it and just wonder what's going on. And there was an interesting example of that when I used to teach down in Carnet Prison Farm, just up the road. There was one gentleman there, and he was from Yugoslavia. That was before the breakup of Yugoslavia in the Balkans War. And that as a kid, he remembers being on an operating table as just a kid, maybe 4, 5, 6 years of age or something. And he died. He floated out of his body and was watching the doctors frantically, desperately trying to find out what's wrong and trying to get his body working again. And as he told it, that he was only a child, I don't know if he's even started school, but didn't know anything about medicine. But he sort of intuitively knew the doctors were looking in the wrong place. And he just almost like willed. One of the doctors, don't look over that part of my body, look over this part of the body. And the doctor did. And they said, hey, we found it, it's here. And that's how they brought him back to life again. And he said from that time on, he survived. He could leave his body at any time. He could astral travel. So he told me, and quite frankly, that he didn't mind being in Carnot Prison Farm. He could leave any time he wanted. And they thought he was just sleeping in his cell. No walls could contain him. If he wanted to see a movie, or wanted to see a concert, or wanted to see, he just went. In his astral body, and he came back in plenty of time for the morning breakfast. It's pretty cool. I don't think you mind this one also. Some of you, do you remember the gentleman, one of the very early Buddhists in Perth, called Keith Sword? Remember Keith Sword? Burmese, yeah. Yeah. But apparently that he had a very, very strong mind, and he could do that. He could sort of astral travel. He was married to this lovely English girl, Barbara. And Barbara, very English. I remember she was going to do this recipe once, she told me, and the recipe was including, I think, pig's brains or something. And she went into the butcher's shop or something, Coles or somewhere, and just asked the guy, "Have you got any brains?" And she actually did that, and the guy took offence before, "Oh yeah, sorry, okay," and that sometimes happens. But anyway, she's a very nice girl, and but he was really jealous of her, and just so he got a job doing aircon over in Darwin, and he told me in front of his wife Barbara, and said, "Yeah, this is what happens." He was over in Darwin doing a contract for aircon, spending a few weeks over there, and every now and again he'd wonder what his wife was up to. And he'd send his astral body over to, I think it was Cannington somewhere where he lived. And his wife knew he was around. He said, "Keith, look, I'm really faithful to you. Get back to Darwin." so she knew what was going on. So it's interesting, but that's this sort of astral traveling. But sometimes it can appear in front of you, and sometimes it just can actually just be by the body. It could be any place. Dear Ajahn, is this claim true? Ajahn Chah never taught jhana and didn't encourage jhana. It's half true, because he never taught jhana. He taught appana samadhi, which is the word for jhana. That's why people listen to this and they say, "Hey, hang on. All those teachings of Ajahn Chah never mentions jhana," because he uses the Abhidharma commentary term for it, appana samadhi. So I remember just when I, 3 years ago, I think 2 years ago, when I was in Thailand, had a free day, so I went to see Ajahn Jayasaro, and he was actually happy to see me because he was just finishing the English translation, the English version of Ajahn Chah's biography. And so he asked me a few things about what was happening with Ajahn Chah and my anecdotes, my memories of him. And that I also asked him. I said, "Did Ajahn Chah teach jhanas?" I should have recorded this. He said, "He taught appana samadhi," which is the same thing. For those of you who know your Pali, it's just a commentary. I said, "Well, what about getting enlightened? Do you need the jhanas?" He said, "Well, Ajahn Chah said in many of the talks, he said that there are 2 times where you get enlightenment. It's either in upachara samadhi, and those upachara samadhis just before the jhanas and after the jhanas. But Ajahn Chah keeps on saying that the time when you really get opportunities for breaking through deep insight was after the jhanas." And I said, "Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu," and if you listen to all my talks, that's actually what I say. Sometimes I think I make this up myself, but it's mostly coming from your teacher. So, when you say Ajahn Chah never taught jhanas, he did teach jhanas, but he called them by the commentarial name, which was appana samadhi. So he did basically teach jhanas. And encourage jhanas? Yes, he did. It's okay? So that's why people say, oh, he never said that. He said he did. But you've got to understand that he was using a different language. He was using the language of the commentaries. In the same way that Ajahn never taught Sati Sampajanya. He taught Satipanya, which is the same thing, but it's just the different idioms. So that's how Ajahn Chah, he certainly did teach jhanas. And he did practice them, and he did encourage them. Dear Ajahn, often we hear the term as per commentaries. Where are the commentaries documented? Are they explanatory notes on suttas? Yes, I just mentioned on commentaries a moment ago, because they're the same handwriting, so came together. So the commentaries, they came many years after the time of the Buddha. They think maybe 400, oh no, was it? Yeah, I think about 400 or 500 years after the time of the Buddha. I might get that number wrong, but Ajahn Brahmali will probably correct me on that, but no one really knows, but that seems to be about the time of it. Well, when the commentaries were put into form by Buddhaghosa, and so some of those commentaries reflect the movement away from the suttas into the Abhidhamma, and so you can actually see that very clearly. But nevertheless, there's a lot of good things in the commentaries. And years ago, when I was started translating the Vinaya, from the suttas and the commentaries into the English, and Venerable Thanissaro Tanjef was doing the same, so we collaborated, and we decided that the suttas were the primary source. The commentaries, you don't know if they were word of the Buddha or not. So if something in the commentaries was clearly contradictory to the suttas, we'd always reject that. But where something in the commentaries seemed to explain the suttas with more detail, then we'd include that. That was our modus operandi, the way that we weren't going to prefer what we would like to see. We had some logical reason for saying things about the commentaries or not. So there are explanatory notes on the suttas, but they were written a long time after the suttas. So that's why sometimes you can't sort of rely on the commentaries, because there's too many of them which are certainly just wrong. Dear Ajahn, what are the 3 or more most important things you would like to take away from this retreat? Nothing, emptiness, and silence. What do you want to take away from the retreat? There's nothing to be added, nothing to be taken away. It's perfect as it is. That make sense? Or is that too smart, Alec? How to reach targets without stress. Life has target and it makes us not live in present moment. Yeah, that's a problem. We have targets, you reach that target, then what? Another target, and then another target, another target. And it's endless. And how many of those achievements will you take with you into the grave? You can't take any money with you, or no matter how wealthy you are, you can't take that with you. That is why. You know the old man with 4 wives story? Once there was a man with 4 wives, and when he was about to die, he brought his latest wife, his 4th wife, into his bedside. She was young, pretty, really attractive, very young, and he married her late on in his life. And she was just such an amazing personality. She got him invited to all the A-list parties everywhere. You know, she would open the doors to famous and rich people. And so when he called her in, he said, I'm going to die soon. And I know when we married, you said you love me forever. I'm going to die soon. Will you love me into death and come with me into the grave? He said, what? Will you die with me? No, it's never been done before. I won't do things like that. What I will do is I will say wonderful words praising you at your funeral service. That's it. I said, get out of here. I thought you'd love me and go anywhere with me. So he threw her out and got his third wife in, who he married just quite a few years before his last wife. And his third wife, she was really attractive too. And she had incredibly expensive jewelry and fine dresses and great makeup and hair and everything. And actually people, they wanted her more than the fourth wife. Even the fourth wife was younger. And he said, darling, I'm about to die. Will you come with me into death? He said, no. He said, I will supply a lavish funeral for you. And after you die, I'm going with one of your sons. What? I'm not even dead yet. And you're already talking about being unfaithful to me. Get out of here. I don't know why I married you. And then got his second wife. I don't know when he married her, such a long time ago. But she was always there for him. Times of trouble and difficulty, she wasn't that attractive, but she was always there to help him out. And somebody you can rely upon. And so I asked her, darling, I haven't really spent much attention with you. I've been really, with my two latest wives, they were hopeless, they were useless. But I'm about to die. Will you go with me into the grave? And the second wife said, if I would, I could, but I can't, so I won't. So if I go as far as your graveside, I'll stand on the very edge, but I cannot go any further. I'm sorry. And she said it with quite a lot of sadness. So he said, get out, but not with any anger. And they are his first wife, his oldest wife. He didn't know when he married her. Always seemed to be there for him. And said, darling, my other wives, they won't help me. Will you go with me into death? And she said, of course, darling. I go everywhere with you, from life to life. That's why my name is Mrs. Karma. The second wife was called Mrs. Family. Always there to help you. They can go to your graveside, stand on the edge, they can go no further, even though they cry because they can't go any further. And the third wife you marry later on in life, if you do, is Mrs. Wealth. Mrs. Wealth can get you a lavish funeral, but after you die, will go with your son. Inheritance. And the fourth wife was Mrs. Fame, which some people get later on in life. They allow you to get sort of open invitations to A-list parties, but in the end, all they'll ever do is say nice things about you at your funeral, and then they'll forget you. So the man with the four wives, reaching targets, what do you want to reach? Can you take them with you into your next life? Or is it just going to be more of the same? You work really hard, and then it all disappears. So what do you want to achieve and take with you? What is the main difference between Chitta and Vijnana? There are 6 Vijnanas. 6 consciousnesses. That's why we don't call them consciousnesses. You got eye consciousness, let's not call it eye consciousness, sight consciousness, hearing consciousness, smell consciousness, touch consciousness, taste consciousness, and knowing consciousness. Different types of Vijnana. You can't have one without the other. They change. So when you're seeing, you're not hearing. When you're hearing, you're not knowing. The knowing comes afterwards. You hear, and then you know you heard. You see, and you know you saw. You know, and you know you knew. That gives the illusion of the continuity of this conscious process. Just like in the old days, you used to have the celluloid movies, and you could actually see there were just single frames which you pass through the projector really quickly. And it gave the illusion of continuity. That is just like the senses. They are not continuous. They are fragmentary. Just like the wood in front of you. Is that continuous? Of course you know that those are made up of cells. And those cells are made up of molecules. And those molecules are made out of atoms. And there's so much space in between them. It's fragmentary. It's particles. But it appears to be continuous. So that's the vijnana, prayavijnana. The chitta is the mind. It's particularly the mano-vijnana, the knowing consciousness. And that is part of the, it's just the chitta is part of the five khandhas. Because it says over here, does your chitta exist outside the five khandhas, or chitta exists in mano-vijnana and all the other five senses too? Chitta is mano-vijnana. That's what it says. That which people call chitta or mano or vijnana, it's a synonym of the others. That's what the chitta is. And as I said to Taraputa or Taraputa Thera said, he was in the Bhikkhu Theragata. He said, you mind will be destroyed. You chitta are going to be unraveled. There are some individuals who believe that if we spend money in overseas, be it for vacation or donation, we actually steal the money of the people of our own country, although we work for it and earn it through the proper way. Reason given was other citizens contribute to our income as well, and this keeps the money rolling. So if we spend money in overseas, then we are bringing their money out without informing them. Thus, this is regarded as breaking the stealing precept. Can you please share your opinion on this? You are not. It's not your money. It's not a country's money. You are just, money just gets loaned. Who does it belong to anyway? Maybe international banks? I don't know. But anyway, if we spend money in overseas, vacation, where does that money come from anyway? Because you went to that, because other tourists came to your country, vacation or donation. So if that's the case, you believe if you spend money in overseas, we actually steal the money of the people of our own country. That means you must, live by your precepts. And when people come to your country, and then you must make sure they don't pay for any lunch, and they don't pay for any medical care, and they don't pay for any buses or anything, and everyone's given for free. And if they go into the shop, they go into Louis Vuitton, or then they must get everything for free, because otherwise you're stealing their money which they brought in from overseas. So I think that is a little bit untenable. It's not, who owns money anyway? Don't you know the prediction of Ajahn? He said that one day they're going to run out of paper for banknotes, and plastic too. Plastic's bad for the environment. They're going to ban plastic for banknotes. They won't have any metal left for the coins. So what will people use? And he said, he thinks they will use little pellets of chicken shit. And after you've been to work, you'll line up and they'll give you lots of little pellets of chicken shit, and people will be just really upset if they don't earn as much chicken shit as their boss. I've been working in this company for much longer than you have. Why are you getting more chicken shit than I have got? And your wife will be or husband really concerned is, are you earning your chicken shit potential? Are you really being paid? And of course the government will take its cut of chicken shit called tax. And when you go to the bank, or even better, the ATM, it's an automatic token manure. You put your card in and all this poo comes out. And of course the IMF will be called the International Manure Fund, which help people with not enough chicken shit in their countries to make sure they pay off their chicken shit debts. And he went on like this for a long time. It was money anyway. Anyway, thanks for your simple but profound and disgusting guidance. We don't say it's disgusting. Make peace, be kind, be gentle. It's on many retreats t-shirt. What about patience? Where does this fit in? Just wait for it and you'll see it come on some t-shirts. Dear Ajahn, yesterday you said that the jhanas were passed down from the Buddha Kassapa to the time of our Buddha, from teacher to teacher. Oh, well, sort of. But, they were, as it's passed down the line, there's always distortion of the teachings. Just like that, it has actually happened apparently in the First World War. It's when you have a line of kids and one says one thing and they repeat it to the other, and by the time it gets to the end of the line, it's totally different. And this particular order from the general was send reinforcements, we're going to advance. And that was sent to the lieutenant general, who said it to the, how do you go down in the order of command, to the brigadier, to the major, to the lieutenant, to the captain, or the colonel was in there somewhere, and then the sergeant, and then the lieutenant, and then the private. What the private heard was, this was English money, because this was the First World War. Send 3 and 4 pence, 3 shillings and 4 pence. Instead of reinforcements, send reinforcements, we're going to a dance. And that apparently happened. That was the order they heard. Send reinforcements, we're going to advance. It was send 3 and 4 pence, we're going to a dance. That's when it gets passed down the line. There's always distortion. And that's how memory works. The ordinary memory we have. We remember the last time we remembered it. And that was the previous time we remembered something. So every time we remember it, there's a slight distortion. And over those years, or maybe not even years, months, we just remember the last time we remembered it. It's been distorted by that time. That's why we can't trust our memory. But if scientists are right in their understanding of the birth of our planet, species and civilizations, how could this have happened? Homo sapiens have only been around for the last 200,000 years, and using fossil records, etc., we seem to have found all the major civilizations. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, in the Indus Valley. And this is, I say this as a Westerner, sort of Western science is just so biased towards Greek civilization. It's as if India never existed, let alone China. And they always think, where did sort of culture or civilization start? In Babylon or somewhere. And where did philosophy and democracy start? In Greece. And that just is totally blind. It's culturally biased towards that part of the world, where there's huge civilizations in other places, and especially in Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, on the Indus Valley. These were advanced civilizations. The cities were in a grid form. No one actually knows exactly what they were doing, what they were up to, but usually such highly organized civilizations were usually quite advanced. So, been around a lot longer. So, the point is that if you look at the evidence, it's actually quite possible. Why do we feel sad when our parents sacrificed a lot for us? It's, you also sacrifice, I sacrifice. You don't feel sad, you feel inspired to also to see if you can live up to your parents' example. But not all parents, sacrifice. Some they sacrifice a lot, but sometimes that they have their physical, financial, and emotional problems as well, and sometimes that they are not perfect. It's one of those things that if when you are a kid you always look up to your parents as being perfect, and then sometimes you find your parents aren't perfect. And there's no reason to reject your parents and not love them. Sometimes people get a little bit stressed when they found out their father is having an affair with somebody. So what do? Do you just look at all the... That's a terrible thing to do, but do you just forget about all the wonderful things your dad did to sacrifice for you and just allow that one thing, even a bad thing, not to have any love or respect? So sometimes parents do make mistakes. Sometimes they fall to temptation. Sometimes why they do those things is very hard to judge. And I mentioned already my paternal grandfather, who was a terrible man by my father's description of him. But why was he put in that situation? It was poverty, just a very lot of stress, just trying to make ends meet, having a time when, if you had sexual relations with your wife, you're liable to get a kid. There was no sort of birth control. And so just more children keep coming, can't pay the bills, and just no possibility of a future. And so just drunk his life away. So when your parents, my own father, he wasn't a perfect man. I often say that he used to lie. But he wasn't very good at lying. So we all know he was, when he died, even though he wasn't all that truthful sometimes, when he died, and my mother, I was 16 at the time, so my mother, I helped her fill out all the forms. So the death certificate, so he had to find his birth certificate. When we got his birth certificate, we found out he was actually 2 years older than my mother thought he was. And he kept that secret from my mother for all their married life. And then Mary said, "Hey, your dad's, he's 49. I thought he was 47. That's the first time she discovered he was 2 years older than he said. And she was just laughing at that. He wasn't sort of angry or upset because they had a wonderful life together. And so it told me that, that was his weakness. He would lie. But he was still a very good dad. And he was that anecdote. When I was 10 years of age, I got a place in the school soccer team. No primary school, but still that was really a big thing. I got my place on the right wing, playing for the school soccer team. I said, "Dad, I got a place in the school soccer team." He said, "Oh, when are you playing?" I said, "On Saturday morning." "Oh, I've got to work on Saturday morning." So I said, my dad, I was really disappointed. As a kid, you're going to perform at the school soccer team, and my dad couldn't see it. So I was disappointed, but I went along there and I started playing, and a few minutes after we started the kickoff, I heard someone shouting, and I looked around, it's my dad. My dad was there. And I was just so uplifted. My father managed to get to see my first game of soccer, the school football team. And then what happened was that afterwards I said, "Well, how did you get here? I thought you were working." He said, "Yes, I was working, but I told my boss that I had to have a series of injections every Saturday morning for the next 5 or 6 weeks." He was lying. He didn't need those injections, but his boss never knew that. And he did that so he could see his son play soccer. And, it's morally, I think, he's lying, but thanks, Dad. It meant a lot to me. Moral ambiguities. So they did sacrifice a lot, but he wasn't all that honest, but we knew about that. What are the signs of spiritual materialism? It is when after this retreat you ask your friends, he said, how did you do in the retreat? And you say, oh, I saw the nimitta. Nah, nimitta's nothing. You know, I just got the first jhana. Did you get the first jhana? First jhana, that's so simple. We got that the first day. So that's the spiritual, or my teacher. Now, who's your teacher? Well, I just tell stupid jokes all the time. That's not a real teacher. My teacher, he teaches you to sit still and we've got to meditate for such a long time. That's a real teacher. So sometimes spiritual materialism about how many retreats we've done and what we've achieved or what we think we've achieved, who's our teacher and all that sort of stuff. Spiritual materialism, I'm better than you are. Thank you for introducing the joy of meditation in the wider lay communities and the world. Without your simple and effective teaching, probably many of us are still stuck in the right concentration mode now that many are aware of the pleasures of meditation and that the monks and nuns are having lots of meditation fun. Are there considerations to expand the monks and nuns monastery, including jhana grove occupancy with metta? Oh. So I'm already working 7 days a week, actually more than 7 days a week, 365 days a month, 13 months a year. If they expand, it expands naturally. So these things happen. You know, you must be crazy to sort of build another monastery. Actually, how many monasteries am I building now? To build a nuns monastery? What stupid idea did I have to do that one? But no, it's good. The nuns needed a place to stay, so you build one. You build monks' monasteries, but you do need help. So please, if you want a nuns' monastery, we need you to help build it. You need a monks' monastery, we need you to help fund it. Because I don't know, I'm just, these days, I'm just being a fundraiser. I go to these other places, Ajahn, we need you with inspiring teachings, and then we can get you to raise funds for this monastery, that monastery. I'm just like a fundraising monk. What happens? Just go there, give an inspiring talk, and tell people about, oh, you know, it's amazing to actually to be able to donate to monks and nuns monasteries together. That's the highest good karma. It really needs it. You know, Newbury Buddhist Monastery, you've got monks and nuns together there. And that's, you know, the Buddha actually said there's no higher karma than that. The greatest bang for your bucks. But then, and I don't mind doing that because I don't get anything out of it. Actually, I do get out of it. I get headaches and problems and not enough money and just problems. But no, you do that because it's good fun. And you know, more nuns monasteries, you're trying your hardest, but it's really difficult. Because every time I just, a project, I'm going to push this one now, the project for Jhana growth, just the covered walkway. We're trying that for years, to try and get it, and finally just we got the permissions to build it, and now we just got all the regulations. It costs much more money than I ever thought. So that's why we have it on there. Anybody who wishes to donate to the covered walkway, if we don't, I sometimes wonder, what am I doing that for? Why can't we just buy a dozen umbrellas? much cheaper. But anyway, it's too late now, we started. So we've got stuff on there for that. And then something else comes up and you need money for this and money for that. And then sometimes I became a monk, you know, not to have any concerns with money. Anyway, whatever. Sorry? Albion Monastery as well, that's another one. Oh, how did I get into this? But where you can help, then you will help. That's a wonderful thing to do. And yeah, sometimes they think, oh, I'm not going to pay that bill. But it happens, it works. We're fine. So anyway. Dear Ajahn, where would Ajahn Brahmani be back? He's supposed to be back already. Thank you for wonderful teachings. May you attain Nibbana this life. I better, otherwise I have to come back and raise more funds. Enough. But you know, one of the things is that at least in these traditions here, you know that we don't handle any money ourselves. So you see just my robes, just ordinary robes. These are not sort of Gucci or Versace. These are ordinary robes. And you see where I live. If you haven't seen it already, then my cave. I actually live there. And so that's where I just spend most of my time if I'm not here or in Nonamara temple. So you just use as simple a life as you possibly can. And that's at least so you know that if you do any donations, it actually goes to the right places. You go to Dharmasara and just look at that place. It's amazing. What everyone has achieved. I look at this place here. Wow. And we don't just get builders to do everything. I often say, and it's just a wonderful thing, it really inspires me, this bamboo floor on this side over here. This was laid by the monks, working till about, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning? Were you there then? Sorry? Yeah. And it was, because what happened, the builder, I was in charge of the building and stuff, and said, "Are you sure it's going to be done in time by, I think, by January?" He said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Okay, we'll do the opening in April, on Easter." This is 10 years, the 10 years anniversary. We'll do it in the Easter retreat. Gives a couple of months just in case. And of course, as we came closer, "Are you sure it's going to be?" He said, "Are you doubting my professional credentials?" And I was actually saying yes, but no. And of course, what happened? The day before, it still hadn't finished here. And the monks were working, and the builders, the one in charge anyway, he decided it was the last day, so to have a barbecue, finishing off down the bottom by the lake. And I was working with all the monks, and it was not going to be finished in time. We had the opening the next day. It's on the Good Friday. So what are we going to do? So what happens when such things occur? The monks come to the rescue. We did. So the monks, okay, it was actually Ajahn Santuti. He was the main leader in this, and a few other. I think was Mudito there then? He was. No, it couldn't have been. No, but he was one of the main ones. And this area over here, it had all the wood, but it hadn't been laid. So they worked through the night, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, to finish it. So when people came the following morning, it was all finished. And to me, that's actually how it should be. Not easy, but sacrifice. And the monks, we don't sit on there. We sit up here, we got our place. But that's not the point, is it? The point is we can. It's a beautiful thing to do, so we'll do that. So that's what I get inspired by things like that. We don't just take things for granted and just buy things. We help, we serve, we're part of this. And so seeing that is it's just so wonderful to see just how this community works. Everyone chipping in. It's amazing just when you're mindful and you're energetic. Look, it's perfect. Just the way that they did this floor. Much better than professionals. Anyway, cool. Can you please advise how to overcome deep-seated grief? Stand up. You see, deep-seated, so deep stand. If it's deep-seated grief, don't try to overcome it. Understand it. Because sometimes this is strange to hear, but when we're grieving, we enjoy that tightness, that tension. And if we keep on enjoying it too long, we do get attached. It's not the case that we only get attached to pleasant stuff. Sometimes we get attached to unpleasant stuff as well. So we understand the grief. You can, obviously, understand that, no one knows the pain of the person, who has lost someone dear to them. No one knows that pain. But why isn't it sort of fading away? There must be something feeding it. It's a hard thing to say, but we ask, why? What's feeding it? And if we can find that, there is some sort of attachment. It's weird, but we do feel it could be just because we feel guilty. We want to punish ourselves by this feeling of grief. We don't want to live a life because we feel somehow or other we're complicit in the event. So those are a couple of reasons why. There was this gentleman many years ago. He was actually, I shouldn't really say who he was, but people in Dhammasara should know him. But when he was a kid growing up in Sydney, as a little boy, he was playing on one of the piers with his best friend. He was about 6 or 7 at the time. And just for fun, he pushed his best friend into the water. His best friend died. He killed him. Just by a bit of fun, just push you in. But the kid, I don't know, hit his head or something, but he drowned. And his best friend, the parents, lived next door. So, there he was, the cause for his best friend's parents' incredible grief. And just a young kid, hadn't even started life, only 6 or 7 years of age. And he felt so guilty for years. Even though the parents said, it's not your fault. You're just having fun. You didn't mean to kill your best friend. Just kids being kids. You could have done that yourself many times, just playing around with your friends. But in this case, it was a tragic outcome. But then he said that when he was, I forget what age, 16 or 17 or 18, he woke up one day and he thought, I don't need to have that grief anymore and that guilt. It was just, he said it was as simple as that, weird. He realized he didn't need it. He could let it go, and he did. And he said that he was a very smart guy, but that guilt and grief just stopped him, just doing well at school. He was always like a bit depressed, not good enough. He was trying to live up, to his guilt complex. So anyway, but not being worth anything, not deserving any happiness. But anyway, he said that, it was surprising the way he said that to me. He said one day he just literally woke up in the morning, he didn't need to have that grief and guilt anymore. He just dropped it. So eventually when we feel we're punished, for him it was he'd punished himself enough. He didn't need it anymore. Forgave. What is grief anyway? Is it all caught up with guilt and punishment? We want to punish ourselves? Sometimes when you're right in the middle of it, you can't see it. It's just all consuming. But then sometimes you can stand back and see why. What's the purpose of grief? Do you know any good stories about Ajahn? Everything I've read describes him as a very fierce monk, always telling people off. But how could an arahant who's supposed to be so kind, gentle and compassionate be so fierce and scary? After that, the biography of Ajahn, written by Ajahn Mahabua, that Ajahn Tate decided to do his own autobiography so that no one sort of distorts his life. That's where Ajahn Tate's biography came from, because he said that's not Ajahn. Sometimes I've read that book by Paul Breiter. What's it called? About Ajahn Chah, like Venerable Father or something. When I started reading that, I said, hey, who's this about? It's supposed to be Ajahn Chah. I lived with 9 years with Ajahn Chah. And that's not Ajahn Chah as I remember him. When you write a biography, much of what you're writing is of yourself, how you interpret and how you see it. But if you want to know one of my own stories of Ajahn Mun, because when I was on the Tudong wandering around, I went to this area called the Khao Wong, which was north of Royet. It is south of Sakonnakhon. That area was just where those monks would just go on Tudong. And one of these old men, because when they see monks, they just they like looking after them and just talking and chatting. And I could know enough Thai and Lao then. I could much better than now, because I was using it every day. So I was talking with him. He said, "Oh yeah, Ajahn Mun." He said, he used to stay in the cave just over there, and with another monk, they dug out some gold, because there was gold in those caves in Khao Wong. And Ajahn Mun dug it out himself and took it down to Bangkok to offer to one of the senior monks to make a pair of glasses for the senior monk. That's Ajahn Mun digging out gold, carrying gold, real gold, breaking precepts. So you saw Ajahn Mun? He said, yeah, Ajahn Mun, the one who had a funeral up in Sakonnakhon. So that's a story which never got in the book. That's great when you know a few of the secret stories. What is an example of karmic obstruction? How can one identify and overcome it, especially in meditation? The only karmic obstructions which have any force is if you have shed the blood of a Buddha in this life. So none of you done that. You killed an arahat. How many of you killed an arahat? No. Okay. Whether you have violated a bhikkhuni, or sexually violated, have you done that? We haven't had bhikkhunis for a while, so you're pretty free of that. Or that you've killed your mother or father. Any of you done that? Those are the only ones which are going to cause you big problems. Other than that, you're free. So if you said no to all of those questions, your karmic obstructions are very easy to overcome. In fact, they're not really there. So when sometimes people say, oh, I can't meditate because I've got karmic obstructions, I say, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You can remember your past lives? It's amazing. So sometimes that's just an excuse. I'm just going to have to go a bit faster now. I was doing my usual meditation. I felt both sides of my shoulders slowly being covered by a drape of coldness, like wearing some armor. Oh, that sounds really good, because I'm very warm tonight. Are you warm tonight? So it'd be wonderful to have it so nice and cool. First time I ever felt like this, and it felt good afterwards. I have shoulders stiffened, but the meditation business is really awesome. You discover something new every session. Exactly. Another satisfied customer. So, whatever you need, if you're cold, you get some heat. If you're warm, you get some cool. It feels so nice. Will an arahat ever have dementia or lose his memory at old age? Ajahn Chah had a stroke, couldn't speak. Did he have dementia, lose his memory? Expressing your memory, or being able to say you remember things, is that the stuff of an arahat, or is that just a brain affair? Your brain and your mind are two different things. That's why when a person does hypnotism, that they just bypass the brain and go to the mind. Another BBC documentary, I think Dennis had all of these and showed it to me, Dennis Shepherd. This was a fellow who, they didn't know why, but he suddenly had a loss of memory, And he'd just been married about a few months before, and he couldn't even remember his new wife, and that caused a lot of trouble. You know, I've only been married to you for 3 days, you don't even know what my name is? And, you know, he knew how to sort of, you know, count and speak English, but the short-term memory had just been disappeared. And they didn't know why. And so they got him to be hypnotized. And under hypnosis, he remembered everything really clearly. His marriage, you know, his going out with this girl he was about to marry. But what had happened, just one afternoon, this was in London, in the back of the little garden there was a shed, and he was working in the shed when the telephone rang. This was not the mobile phones, it was the landlines. And so being in the shed and the telephone being in the house, he ran out of the shed to answer the phone and hit his head on one of the open window shutters. And obviously that had done some trauma to his brain and knocked the short-term memory out. And so in the hypnotism, he can remember everything. And so they gave him the post-hypnotic suggestion, when you wake up, you remember everything. So when he came out of his hypnotism, he couldn't remember anything. Hypnotized he could, and hypnosis, but outside he couldn't. Memory was still stored in his brain, still stored in his mind, but not in his brain. Could access it through that. And if any of you ever get into a deep meditation, and you know, usually jhanas, and after you come out and you make that suggestion, what is my earliest memory? Now what you remember, you can actually amazing what you can remember. And it's clear. And there's no doubt at all that that's, you know, happening. No more there's any doubt of, you know, what you had in your evening tea or what you had for lunch today. Even clearer than that. And that's actually, where on earth is that stored, especially if it's a previous life? And that's actually where, you know, you realize that it's stored in the stream of consciousness we call the mind. And it's not in the brain, because brains come and brains go. But this mind is something different. Devadatta was supposed to have had psychic powers, but presumably had practiced the jhanas to get those. How could someone who had experienced jhanas later become evil? Is there a dark side of the jhanas? The jhanas just give you power. How you use that power depends upon other stuff. So jhanas is not just the sufficient cause for enlightenment. It's a necessary cause, but not sufficient. You need something more than just the jhanas. You need the right view, the teachings of other enlightened beings. Teaching of other enlightened beings, Dharma, plus the jhanas. It's just like the jhanas are like the flashlight, and the Dharma, the teachings, is like the map. You may have the most powerful flashlight, but still you won't find the treasure. You might have a brilliant map, but still can't find out where you're going. So you just have the flashlight and the map, two together, you'll be getting enlightened. As for Devadatta, he had a great teacher, his cousin, the Buddha, but he was just so proud he wouldn't listen to a word his cousin said. And so he had the jhanas, he had the flashlight, but not the map. Ajahn Brahm, thank you so much for all your teachings so far. I'm beyond grateful. What's beyond grateful? It's interesting, isn't it? Okay, anyway. Beyond grateful both to you and my friend for encouraging me to come to this retreat. Hope to see you again next year. If conditions are ripe, we'll see each other next year. If conditions aren't ripe, what shall we see next year? Anyway, if someone has achieved jhanas, can he, she know others that achieve it also without asking questions? You can know when others haven't achieved it. Just like when someone is enlightened, can you know if someone's enlightened? That's, sometimes the answer is no, but you certainly can know if they're not enlightened. Very good. An anagami in the pure abodes contemplates Dharma. How do they realize Nibbana? It's just like, how does a sort of a tree, no, not a tree grow, how does a tree eventually fall over and die? Its time in the pure abodes is not going to be that long. But they don't contemplate Dharma, it just happens. That's how they realize Nibbana. What is Nibbana? It's just cessation. After a while, they just fade away. The Buddha actually described it like was it 6 types of anagamis? I don't know, remember the number this time of night, and I've been working hard. So this was like somebody, a piece of steel just comes off a piece of iron, and sometimes the was not cinder, the piece of hot iron just rises up, and sometimes it goes out on the way up, sometimes it goes out on the way down, sometimes it goes out when it hits the ground, and that's all the antara bhava. That's where people who say there's no such thing as an antara bhava, that's the sutta which confutes that for the anagamis, non-returners. And so when it hits the ground and starts a little fire, that's where the anagami gets reborn or reappears in the pure abodes and stays there for a while. And sometimes that fire goes a little way and then goes out because not enough fuel, and that's the anagami. He doesn't stay very long in the pure abodes. And then there is the fire which goes right to the end of the forest before it goes out, and that's the anagami who stays there for a long time in the Sudawasa. So that was the similar which the Buddha gave. So when the fuel runs out, then the person in the Sudawasa pure abodes passes away into Nibbana. They disappear, they're gone, finished. So using the simile of fire. So they don't do anything. It's just when the fire goes out. The sutras say that once returners are reborn as devas and then reborn again as humans. If they don't awaken there, so if they become enlightened as devas, what do they do for the rest of their lives? They die. They're gone. Poof. Finished. Devas. Gone. Dear Ajahn, last night I was gazing at the stars. I saw the Milky Way galaxy. I was so dumbfounded as I've never seen one before. Then I thought about previous Buddhas in this world. Could you mention the names of other Buddhas? Last night you did mention Kassapa, thanks heaps. I was Kakusandasa, was I think the third one. We have the whole list of them somewhere. But is that really important? Can you name all the stars in the Milky Way? How many stars are there in the Milky Way? Do you know? There was this fellow once, he was a courtier with a great king. And the great king said, "Oh, you're really smart." He said, "Yeah, I'm very smart." He said, "How many stars are there in the sky?" Do you know the answer? He said, "Yeah, I know the answer." Really conceited. How do you know how many stars there are in the sky? And he said, "How can you prove it?" He said, "I can prove it too." He said, "Come out onto the veranda, great king, and I'll prove it. Your Majesty, you point to a star, and I'll pick a hair out of your head. The next star, a second hair, and by the time you get to the last star, I'll be on your last strand of hair." And the king said, No, I believe you." So that's how many stars there are in the sky. You mentioned the Buddha could live for an eon long if he wanted to. If I am not mistaken, the Buddha told the capability to one of his main students, that was Ananda. However, the student did not ask the questions or request the Buddha to prolong his life. I am curious to hear your thoughts of why the student remained silent and did not ask Buddha to stay and teach for a longer period. That is one story, but there was another story that after the Buddha was enlightened, that Mara came and said, this must have been after Brahmavamso, and said, "Well done, okay, I concede, you're fully enlightened, but just don't teach. Because teaching is just too much of a burden, talking about this and talking about it, you just get a headache. So Mara said, just take it easy and just go into Parinibbana, just cease and just have a nice sort of end of your samsaric life by entering Nibbana straight away. And the Buddha said, no. He said, I will not enter Parinibbana, I will not cease until I have established the 4 assemblies of strong communities of monks who are enlightened, or at least stream winners, strong communities of bhikkhunis who are enlightened, strong communities of lay followers, or at least anagamis, strong communities of lay women who are attained. When I've established big communities of bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas and upasikas, then I will enter Parinibbana. It was like his mission to establish the sanghas and the communities of lay people, make them really, really strong, and then he could go. His job was over, because from that time on, the Buddhism would be self-sufficient. It would roll on. It would be sort of able to keep regenerating from time to time. So, and at that time, under the Alawash, was it? When I get tired, my brain starts to stop. Just at Vaisali, at the shrine, the Chapala shrine, that Mara came again, and just after Ananda had failed to ask the question, can you carry on? And Mara said, oh, just by the way, the Sangha of monks and the Sangha of nuns, the groups of lay followers, male and female, is really strong. So remember your promise you made to me, that once it is strong, then you will enter Parinibbana. And so the Buddha said, yeah, okay, I remember that. Okay, in 3 months' time, I will cease my existence. So that's another of the strands, and that is a lovely story because it shows it was the Buddha's intention from the very beginning to have nuns. So when anyone criticizes me for my part in re-establishing bhikkhunis, I just say I'm just being a good student of the Buddha, just continuing on what he started. This is what you're supposed to do. So it was the Buddha's intention all along to have bhikkhunis. Dear Ajahn, tomorrow is my birthday. Can I have breakfast on bed topped with the most lame joke to crack up this old bone? Thank you for all the jokes. I never get tired listening to them. Your jokes open up the door to my heart and gave me the time of my life better than any vacation I have had. That's very good. So tomorrow is your birthday. Can you have breakfast in bed? So what type of breakfast do you want in bed tomorrow? If you have breakfast in bed, it has to be in the bed, not on top of the bed, but under the covers. Otherwise, it's not really in the bed, it's on the bed. Some nice, lots of jam. So yeah, of course you can have breakfast. I actually did say breakfast on bed. I got it wrong. But okay, you can have breakfast on bed. You have to go and get it, and you have to put it on your bed. And you can explain it to Bianca afterwards. Whose birthday is it tomorrow? How will I know which room to take it into? Anyway, I had an interesting reflection. I was meditating, my mental state seemed just normal, but when I imagined going home and having to talk to people, etc., that same mental state suddenly felt like bliss. Great. Made me wonder, is there a state called bliss, or is it just our own perception of the difference between now and then? again, the happiness is dependent upon suffering. Suffering is dependent upon happiness. So actually, sometimes we are blissed out, we are happy, but we don't realize it. I always noticed that the healthiest I ever felt was when I just came out of hospital after a sickness. Because you could actually just compare, being the, and then when you were out, you felt healthy. But I'm probably healthier now, but you don't realize it because it's just normal. So that's one of the problems. You're peaceful now, but you go outside and think, wow, I really am peaceful. There was this one gentleman who, during the 3 months range retreat, he said, oh, no, I'm getting nowhere, my meditation is really terrible. And so I used a skillful means. We needed something from town, so I sent him to the shopping centre in Armadale to go and get something for the monastery, I think for the retreatants. So off he went into the Armadale. When he came back, he said, I didn't realise how peaceful I was. It's crazy out there. Well, that's where you used to live before, always going in there. And he realised that sometimes after 6 or 7, 8 days, you've actually calmed down. We've all calmed down together. And so when you actually go out into that crazy world, you realise how still and peaceful you have become. On the last day, instead of talking about metta meditation, could we please give a talk on gratitude, especially gratitude to our teacher and to the great teacher, the Buddha? That's the same as metta meditation. You spread loving kindness to all beings. Why do you decide to become a monk? It's because I had a broken heart. And I became a monk to forget. It's consistent because I can't remember having a broken heart. So it worked, maybe. Why did Ajahn Chah become a monk? Because I remember him telling me that. I've done pretty well here. Why Ajahn Chah became a monk? He said that when he was a young boy in the village, his Bangkok was his village, and he used to, like many kids, they didn't have any iPads or iPhones to play games on, so they used to make up their own games, like children would. And the game which they would often play, instead of playing like football or house, they used to play monks. They saw monks all the time, so that was actually a game they played. And Ajahn Chah would always volunteer to be the monk. And so what he would do, he would get an old brown rag somewhere and wrap it around him, and he would sit on a rock higher than all his friends, and they would go to their houses and get him things to eat. And he said ever since that time, he always wanted to be a monk when he grew up. And that's what he said. That's almost exactly in his translation of his words. So sometimes you think that these great monks, do they have a sense of humor? My goodness, they do. So what I became a monk for, because I liked my meditation, so I gave it a try and it just really took off. So I was very happy being a monk. And my own story, as soon as I became a monk, sometimes you don't really know whether this is a life for you until you try it. So as soon as I ordained as a novice monk, I know the room where I was staying and recall this event. I would wake up with a nightmare. The first 4 or 5 nights I was a novice monk, just ordained. So I was on the ground, a little mattress, and my nightmare, which I'd wake up in a sweat, was that I was a layperson, that I hadn't ordained. And I opened my eyes, and I saw my robes folded next to my bed. Yes, I've made it. And I closed my eyes and went into a very deep sleep afterwards. And that was honest, that was weird. There was something deep inside that, this is who I was, what I wanted to be. And so as soon as you saw that, beautiful sort of robes, nicely folded, novice robes, and that was, I'd made it, I was a monk, I was in robes. And so happy. The fear that I wasn't and then open your eyes and you were. So you lay down and had a wonderful sleep afterwards. Anyway, recreational fishing is killing. Please explain the consequences of this type of killing. Thank you. Recreational fishing. Why do people do recreational fishing? Because they say they like the peace and the quiet. So great. So you can go recreational fishing. It's not killing. It's only if you catch something it's killing. So I ask people, just why don't you just take the hook off your line? And then you can drop the line in the water. You can still be with your friends. It's actually more peaceful. You're not disturbed by something tugging on your line. So that's my advice if you really like fishing. And no one knows you haven't got a hook on the end of the line. The fish know, and they're very happy for you. And your friends don't know. So because it's under the water, you just, oh, no luck today. And you have a nice peaceful time. And you don't get disturbed. And it's even more peaceful than recreational fishing. So that's the type of fishing. And I thought I'd invented that one, but there was some Mahayana monk, or I remember seeing a little image of it in Mahindarama temple in Penang once. I didn't have actually time to ask exactly what it was, but it was some sort of bodhisattva, you know, in the Chinese tradition, who did just that. He would go fishing, would never put a hook on his line. So he just enjoyed just the solitude and the calmness of fishing. Just an excuse to be out there in the wild not doing anything. So yeah, please get a nice, what's it called, the rod and line, but just forget about the hooks. They have such a peaceful time, the very best. You know that I always wanted a fishing rod when I was a kid. And so I think I saved up and for a birthday, and I got myself a fishing rod. I went fishing. And this is my good karma, because when I went fishing, you know, there's this lake and you had to pay some money just to actually fish in it. And my grandfather decided to teach me how to fish. And it was like, you know, a grandfather, a grandkid thing, you know, just to bond and to do something. And so he took the line and he cast the line and he threw it and it got caught in the tree and he pulled it and he broke the thing. And actually the rod cracked, it broke. And I was really angry at my grandfather for that. But these days, thank you, grandfather. You saved me a lot of bad karma with that really good fortune. And you know, he was really embarrassed at the time. But it must be, you know, he probably knew how to fish, but maybe just, you know, the Devas, as he was putting it in, they just pulled it this way so that I wouldn't make any bad karma. So, you know, quite good karma by going fishing and not catching anything. In fact, even breaking the rod before I had to go of doing it. Anyway, but I must admit, I did like the maggots. I got this big, you know, from the fishing shop, got this big tin of maggots. And guess who I showed them to? Hey, Mum, look at this. They're all crawling. And in the end, we just put them in, that they got freed into the lake or whatever. Anyway, that's my upbringing. So, okay. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, sorry for going on a bit long this time, but I got most of the questions answered. If there's some questions I didn't answer properly again, I apologize. I'll try my best. Very good.